If you've ever wondered whether your kid will actually be ready to handle their own stuff once school starts, this video is for you. I'm glad you're here. You're probably hoping September is when your kid finally learns to handle their own stuff. The schedule kicks in, the teacher's watching. There are real consequences for the first time in several months. And I get it. It looks like independence being built. But here's what's actually happening. September is opening night, not a training ground. And by the time the curtain goes up, you don't want your kid finding out for the first time whether they can handle it. I figured that out with my own two boys, using a summer soccer league as the low stakes practice round for the higher stakes fall season. 2 jerseys, packed every time, unpacked the second we got home, and straight into the laundry so they'd be ready for the next game. Not because I was a mean mom, because summer was the rehearsal for the fall. I'm going to show you how to use summer on purpose to build independence, not by accident, not by hoping it happens, so that when September hits, it's manageable instead of a meltdown. Before I show you the system, I have to name what's actually in the way. The belief that structure alone builds independence. And I get why you believe it. Structure looks like the thing doing the work. It's visible. It's got deadlines and consequences built right in. Summer, by comparison, feels like the opposite. Unstructured, low stakes, more of a break than a training ground. So of course it seems like September is when the real learning starts. That's not a dumb belief. It's a reasonable one. But here's the cost of that reasonable belief. Summer becomes vacation. For them, sure, but also for you. You step back. You let them decompress. You figure September will take care of it. And then September comes, and there's tears over the homework routine. The backpack never lands in the same place twice. And you're standing in the kitchen at 7 a.m. wondering how they got this far without knowing how to manage a single morning. Because think about what actually builds a skill in any domain. Sports, music, a new job. It's never the high stakes performance that teaches you. It's the low stakes rep over and over when the cost of getting it wrong is small. September is the performance. Summer is the rehearsal. And if you skip the rehearsal, your kid isn't learning independence in September. They're just failing in public for the first time, with you watching stressed, wondering why the structure didn't do its job. Structure alone doesn't build independence. Practice does. And summer is the best season to build it. Here's the first mistake most of us make when we try to build independence in our kids. We hand them a task and we think that's the whole job. Do the chore, remember the thing, done. But if that's all you're handing them, you're not building independence. You're just outsourcing labor. And the second you're not there to remind them, falls apart. With my boys, packing the soccer bag was never really the point. Anybody can pack a bag once. The real test was what happened the second we walked in the door after a game. Sweaty, tired, probably hungry, and definitely not wanting to think about laundry. That's when the system was actually being built or not. And I won't pretend there wasn't pushback. There were plenty of games where the last thing either of them wanted to do was deal with that bag, and I heard about it. But here's what I noticed over that summer. It stopped being about me reminding them, and it became about them not wanting to be the one who stood out for the wrong reason, not in front of the teammates they respected, And underneath that, something quieter, less anxiety. They didn't want to be scrambling. They wanted to just know they had what they needed. That's not compliance, that's ownership. Now, this is worth naming. That motivation doesn't look identical for every kid. Not every kid cares about standing out or what teammates think. Maybe your kid's version isn't pride. Maybe it's simpler than that, like just not wanting to be nagged. Almost every kid cares about something. Your job isn't to manufacture caring out of nothing. It's to create enough low-stakes friction that whatever does move your kid actually gets the chance to show up. Real independence isn't just handing your kid a task and hoping they remember to do it. It's handing them something they end up caring about because their pride is attached to it, not just your reminder. When a kid starts protecting their own reputation, their own comfort, their own readiness, that's when you know it's theirs. Not because you told them to own it, because they decided it mattered. You're not building independence when your kid does the task. You're building it the moment they start caring whether it gets done without you. So if independence isn't built by structure alone, if it's built by practice, here's the question that actually matters. Why summer? Why not start this in September, since that's when it actually counts? Because think about what a mistake actually costs in each season. In summer, if my kid forgot to swap a jersey, worst case, he's a little embarrassed for a game. Forgettable by the next weekend. Now picture that same kind of forgetting in September. It's not a jersey, but a permission slip or the folder due on a new teacher's desk on day 3. Same kind of slip, same kid, completely different cost. That's the part we get backwards. We treat summer like it's too low stakes to matter, like nothing important happens there. So why bother being intentional? But low stakes isn't the same as low value. Low stakes is exactly what makes it safe to practice. You don't want your kid's first real mistake to happen in the season where mistakes are expensive. You want it to happen in the season where it's cheap, where getting it wrong costs almost nothing, and getting it right builds real confidence before anything's actually on the line. And this doesn't require wide open, unstructured days. Even one recurring moment, pickup, dinner, bedtime, is enough room to practice. That's not wasted time. That's an affordable window most parents let go to waste. Summer isn't a break from building independence. It's the cheapest season to get it wrong. And that's exactly why it's the best season to build it. Okay, so you're convinced. Summer's the window. But how do you actually do this without turning it into another thing you have to manage? With my boys, it wasn't just pack your own bag. That's a task. What I actually built was a system. 3 parts, and all 3 had to be there or it fell apart. First, a clear standard, not be responsible. That means nothing to a 10-year-old. It was specific. Both jerseys, every time, in case the other team showed up in the same color. Second, a natural trigger, not a reminder from me, the moment itself. The second we walked in the door from a game, the bag got unpacked. Not sometime this week, right then, when the moment was still fresh. Third, a real felt consequence, not one I invented to teach a lesson, just the one sitting there in the situation. One Saturday, a jersey hadn't made it into the wash in time. My son knew it walking into that game. Nobody yelled, nobody lectured. He just felt it. That small, uncomfortable gap between what he needed and what he had. That was the whole consequence. And it did more than any reminder from me ever could. Here's one thing worth saying clearly. This only works for stuff where the worst case is discomfort, not danger. You're the judge of that line. And expect some trial and error getting it calibrated. Too small? They won't notice. Too big? And you won't feel good about it. I still had to check in those first few weeks. This isn't a hand it off and walk away situation. If you want to build this with your own kids this summer, don't just hand over a task. Build the 3 pieces. A standard specific enough that they know exactly what done looks like. A trigger that happens automatically instead of relying on you to remember. And 3, a consequence that's real but not manufactured. This isn't about soccer bags. It's about the pattern underneath them. And that pattern transfers to whatever your kid needs to own and what your household looks like. Whatever the budget is, a packed lunch, a backpack, a chore, the system works the same. A task is something you remind them to do. A system is something that reminds them for you. So what actually happened when September came? This part I didn't expect going in. It wasn't that the school year suddenly ran perfectly. Kids forget things, mornings are still mornings, but something had already shifted before the first day even started. My boys walked into that fall already knowing something about themselves. They'd handled real responsibility all summer, and it worked. Nobody had to tell them they were capable. They'd already proven it to themselves on a soccer field weeks before it mattered anywhere else. And it changed something in me too, if I'm honest. I didn't still know if they'd handle everything, but I wasn't guessing anymore about whether they could handle something real. I'd already watched it happen. That's different from hoping. And once I had that, even just from one summer, one soccer bag, it got a little easier to hand off the next thing and the one after that. Here's what summer actually builds if you're intentional about it. It's not about independence for one summer. It's a launch pad. Whatever your kid handles well over those few months becomes a lived success story they carry forward. Proof in their own experience that they can start to do hard things. And it becomes proof for you too. Not hope, but evidence. And it wasn't the last thing I handed off that year. That's what makes it possible to keep letting go again and again, long after summer's over. Summer doesn't just build a kid who's ready for fall. It builds a mom who's ready to keep letting go. And that's the real win here. Not a smoother morning in September, but 2 people who trust each other a little more than they did in June. So if you're standing in your kitchen right now, still in the middle of the summer, wondering whether this time even matters, here's what I want you to know. It's not about waiting for September to force the issue. It's not about hoping your kid figures it out once the stakes are real. You get to decide right now what gets practiced while it's still safe to get it wrong. A jersey left in a bag isn't really about a jersey. It's a low stakes rehearsal for every high stakes moment that's still ahead of your kid. And for every moment ahead of you where you'll need to trust them enough to step back. You don't need a perfect system. You don't need to get it right the first time. You just need to start somewhere this summer so that by the time it counts, you're not just hoping. You're building the kind of proof that carries you forward. If this is landing for you, if you're realizing you've been waiting for structure to do work that only practice can do, Join Ambitious and Well, where overwhelmed working parents start becoming energized leaders. It's free, and the link is in the description. I'd love to see you inside. Thanks for joining me today, and I'll see you in the next video.